It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome to Song Talk Radio, the show with songwriters talking to other songwriters about the craft of songwriting. We share tips, tools, and techniques, and together we become better at writing songs. I'm your host, Neil Modi, and with me, my co-host, Mr. Phil Emery. How are you doing, Phil?
From St. John's, Newfoundland, I'm doing just fine, even though we keep on getting more snow. Although now we're getting freezing rain, so, that's kind of a nice change.
Nice. It's been, what was it today? It was 11 degrees here in Toronto.
I know. That's
Thank you, global warming.
Yeah. Not working out for us at all.
No, not at all. And everyone else, please send your comments, questions to at Song Talk Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or feedback at songtalk.ca for the email, and we'll share your thoughts on the show. And please visit songtalk.ca to see the show post for this episode, to find links to resources we'll mention, and you're going to want to do that with tonight's episode for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And tonight, we're very happy to welcome back to the show music expert in just about every single way you can possibly imagine, Mr. Allister Bradley. How are you doing, Allister?
Terrific. I was dying for you to introduce me so I could talk about the weather too.
Oh no, how's the weather out there?
Oh no, I was just going to say, get ready for it, because tomorrow it gets cold again here in Southern Ontario. But
deep freeze again. And just a little bit about Allister. Allister Bradley has been writing songs since he was old enough to sing them, and he's spent more time learning the craft and nuance of songwriting than he'll ever want to admit. Fast forward a few decades, and there's a catalog of his music out in the world, playing into the ears in need of a groove, a story, or a reason to sit back and turn off everything else. He continues to write in his studio and in collaboration with other songwriters on nearly every continent. He's written and recorded for several independent films, and hires himself as a session player and vocalist to artists and radio personalities all over the world. He teaches and facilitates workshops at Song Studio, the premier Canadian songwriting education experience. That's since 2005. And he mentors young singers in the annual Wellesley Idol Youth Talent Competition and Development Program. Welcome back to Song Talk Radio, Allister.
thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on the show. We're going to be tapping your deep knowledge about the music business tonight. But before we get to that, just a couple of things. I brought this to the attention of you guys. If you hadn't heard of it, Billy Joel released a new song and video, Turn the Lights Back On. And I must admit, I'm not a huge Billy Joel fan. I do like him, and being a piano player, of course, I like him. But the video just blew my mind. The way they introduced artificial intelligence thing to give us younger versions of Billy Joel singing his new song. just like boink. As I was barely listening to the song when I watched the video. I was like, where are the seams? Where is this? Is this the body of Billy Joel? Is that the head? Is that what's going on here? I was looking for the stitchings.
And the way the camera moves, suddenly before you're seeing his face, you're seeing that his wardrobe has changed. You're seeing, now he's no longer in the tweed jacket; he's in the leather jacket. Okay, I can't wait to see leather jacket era Billy Joel, and there he is. When the hands up.
And his hands are aged too.
And his hands.
Yeah. What I thought was so interesting, though, is I thought the song sounded very Elton John-y.
Oh, yeah?
Like it didn't sound all that Billy Joel-ish. I mean, I like Billy Joel quite a bit. He had that one album. What's the one where he's throwing a rock at a glass house? Yeah, and that's, which was a great album. But
when this new song came out, I felt like it sounded satisfactorily, or whatever the word I'm looking for is, like a Billy Joel classic.
Yeah.
It comes across like a Billy Joel classic.
Yeah.
I'll admit that it was not until you asked about it, Neil, that I actually saw the video. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's new. And because I'm a tough critic, I did think it was pretty cool, and it was almost believable.
Almost.
Yeah, the artificial intelligence. On a similar, vein, I watched the latest Raiders of the Lost Ark movie. Raiders.
Oh, like Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
And I was flabbergasted at how they used the technology to show us a young Indiana Jones. I thought, when I was watching it, I thought, oh my God, did they film this 30 years ago?
Right.
Because it is absolutely believable.
Yeah. And it's incredible, the technology. I mean, Harrison Ford, okay, Billy Joel, they were in on it. They knew about it.
Yeah.
Consent, whatever. But man, what a slippery slope when you don't have the person's say so. It's a dangerous world we're getting into.
I know at the end of the day, you're going to completely AI this podcast and you're going to put words in my mouth that I wish I had said. I wish I'd been smart enough to say.
I want to do it for me so I don't have to show up anymore. Just take Thursday nights off. But I was curious about the song. I looked up a couple of articles, and the Turn the Lights Back On video was directed by Warren Fu and Freddie Wexler. And Freddie Wexler was also the co-writer and the producer on the song. So this is a co-write. Maybe that's why it sounds a little Elton, maybe. The clip uses technology from Deep Voodoo, the AI entertainment company founded by South Park co-creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone. So those guys created an AI company.
What do you know?
They're very talented, and their musical is really good. Book of Mormon.
Never seen it.
It's a fantastic musical, actually. Really good songs.
Okie dokie. Okay, so tonight we're happy to have Allister here. He's going to be learning us up on song registrations. So as songwriters, we know that we're entitled to royalties for songwriting, recording, and a bunch of other stuff. And Allister's here to tell us the what, the how, and the why of all that juicy stuff.
I have spent countless hours researching this, and in fact, I do consult for a few of my clients to help them get registered, to help them in any way I can. In fact, so for some people, I'm doing the legwork to get their songs released, and for other people, I'm making sure that they're registered everywhere and anywhere.
Do you do this for Canadians as well as Americans, or?
I have only done this for Canadians.
Okay.
The production I do for anybody. I'm working with a guy in Sydney, Australia, and another artist in Calgary at the moment. So we're doing remote production. Okay. But as far as the releases and the registrations, I would need to do more hours of research to be able to help you out in the U.S.
Yeah, because it's a whole different thing down there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to stick to Canada. So for our U.S. listeners, you may glean something from this.
We can, yeah. And I mean, where possible, we can touch on other jurisdictions.
Cool. Okay, so where do we start? SOCAN is my guess, but you tell us.
let's not even jump quite there yet.
Okay.
There's an amazing resource, in fact, on the website of the Copyright Board of Canada. If you go to the Copyright Board of Canada and look under copyright information / collective societies, it lists all the collective societies applicable to Canadian musicians or filmmakers or actors or you name it. So it's a great place to go and look at it from the umbrella over all the organizations. But we'll dive in and we'll talk about every one of them.
But just to get a bigger picture on the whole thing, in case people don't know, and I would even count myself as one of these people, because it's like what is exactly a royalty? Like it's actually it's a recognition of the value of artistic works.
Yes.
And I guess the reason it varies from country to country is because, I mean, does every country in the world do this? I mean, does North Korea, Iran, places where music is banned?
Most,
are there places in the world where this doesn't happen at all? Because it is very much I like to think it's like a post-recording. Like it's not as old as music, obviously, but it's a thing that governments came and recognized that we need to do this sort of thing.
Yes.
Or societies of artists, probably more than governments.
Yeah.
It probably came from the ground up, didn't it?
I think some of these dated back as far as, the creation of player piano rolls.
Okay.
That somebody was due publishing rights on that copyright. Here's the thing is, anybody who creates art, so musicians, filmmakers, etc., they have the right to exploit their art. Let's be general about it and say that they have rights that are granted just from the fact that they created something. So, we could, as individual songwriters, we could be on the phone saying, I want to exploit my copyright this way. I want to exploit my copyright this way. I want to allow you to listen to my song online, and then you pay me 1/1000th of a penny. And we could do that all independently, but what we do instead is we allow partners to exploit certain rights to do with our copyright. So we hire SOCAN to take care of certain rights, and we allow them to issue licenses to use our copyright where it's in their field. But they don't handle all of the rights. And they only represent the songwriters and the publishers. They don't represent the musicians. They don't represent the master recording owners. So we partner with somebody else, and we give them the right to exploit our copyright in their field. So this conversation, requires us to ask ourselves, which hat am I wearing at the moment? What rights do I have as a songwriter? What rights do I have as a publisher? What rights do I have as a performer, as an artist, as the record label? Because if we create our own master recordings, we are a record label.
Allister, how does if you're just like a person like me who just records stuff at home and puts it out and maybe tries to send it out, but I don't work with a publisher and I don't work with a label. Do those things still apply to me, even though I don't maybe have a label or I don't?
That's right. If
publishing.
Well, if you don't have a record label partner, you are the label. If you don't have a publishing partner, you are the publisher. You're self-published. So it's the same thing when you consider, would I sign to a publisher? Well, the act of signing the publishing deal is granting the publisher those rights. They can exploit the copyright on your behalf. They can issue licenses to use the work and collect the royalties due.
Yeah, because most people, when they think of DIY musicians, do it yourself at home sort of thing, which has been going on a long time now, is we were able to record at home and do all that sort of stuff. They think it stops with production, but what you're saying is it extends further than that. You become a label. You become you are the performing musician. You are the writer, the producer, the master record owner.
That's right.
All those things.
That's right.
Pretty much all the hats. If you're an independent songwriter that works and records at home, then yeah.
Although there are some hats that we wouldn't even dream of wearing. We're not going to set up our own internet radio station so that our music can be played to people around the world. We're going to push our music to some streaming service and have them take care of that for us. But we could. So that's how I've sort of laid out. The thinking on this is know which hat you're wearing and who you want to partner with in order to deal with those rights that you have as the copyright owner, but you can allow somebody else who really knows what they're doing and has the connections to exploit your copyright properly. This is completely independent of your right to negotiate, say, a sync license. Even if you have registered with SOCAN and registered with all of the groups that will issue licenses on your behalf and collect royalties, airplay royalties, that kind of thing, you're still, for most of our listeners, you're still self-published. You're still a publisher. So you can still enter into a deal with, CBS television and get your song placed on the next episode of, I don't know, Grey's Anatomy. So you're not losing that kind of right, but it has to do with all the royalties that are due, according to the Copyright Board of Canada, and they have been growing over the decades. There are certain rights and royalties that we didn't have 50 years ago.
What is meant by the publishing rights? That's something that's always kind of confused me, because you see all these legacy artists that sell their catalog to some big company or something like that, but it's not the rights to the composition. It's just the publishing rights. What does that mean?
It's the publishing rights. So in terms of the rights to exploit a song property, in Canada, the powers that be have gone to great lengths to make sure that writers, de facto standard, they have their share and they cannot lose their share. They can't have it taken away from them. But if they want to partner with somebody to exploit that copyright, that is the publishing side of it. So in a simple co-publishing deal, you have half the publishing and a publishing company has the other half of the publishing, but you're not splitting up the writer's share.
Mm-hmm.
You're still so you could sell your catalog and you still have that writer's share of royalties due to you as the songwriter.
Right, but you're going to lose the distribution.
But you could lose the publishing. So, the monies that come in for the song are split half to the publishers and half to the writers. So, by all means, if you've got someone who wants to work your catalog, that's a great option. If you want to sign to a publisher, you're not losing your writer's share.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you assign to them the entirety of the publisher share, at least they're going to work for it and you're going to benefit. So let's talk about knowing what you're registering. I'm not even getting into the organizations yet,
right.
But there are some things that I think are important to remember. Understand the splits. So I've had to work with clients to try and fix bad registrations because they didn't understand the splits. If the three of us get together, Phil, Neil, the three of us get together and write a song, it's possible that Neil and I, worked together initially and put down the musical track and came up with a melody. And then Phil came in the room and top-lined it, or we wrote lyrics together. Those are different parts of the song property. So it's not the case that all three writers listed are necessarily all composers and all lyricists. And if I had a song and I desperately needed a second verse, everything else was ready. I just needed the lyrics for a second verse. And Phil, you helped me write that second verse. I would say, you know what, man, let's keep this simple. Let's share ownership of that part of the copyright, 50-50 on the lyrics, but I'm still 100% on the music. And the powers that be, the organizations we registered with, they do care about what my share is of the musical part and what my share is of the lyrical part. So, if I didn't understand that and I said, thanks, Phil, for that second verse, it's awesome, I love it, we're going to register ourselves as 50-50 on the song, well, then suddenly you're earning 50% of the music as well. Which, if that song really blows up, I'm going to say, wait a minute, did I register that properly? Crap.
And of course there are, and that is an explicit decision that as collaborators you need to make, and I feel you've always mentioned this. Make sure you arrive at that decision before you start writing.
Absolutely.
but there are, like, I always cite Sloan, one of my favorite bands, no matter who writes the song, and it's pretty clear when you're a fan of Sloan which songwriter wrote those songs. They say anyway that they split everything a quarter. between all four members, regardless of who wrote what, regardless of Patrick, who writes all the hits. He's the one who writes the catchy hits. So those are the ones that generate the most money, but they still split everything, even Steven wrote the band.
And that's the best way to keep your relationship alive. Because the minute you start saying, well, you know what, I think what you did is 5% less than what I did.
Yeah.
Then there's no way that contributes to a happy relationship between you and your collaborators.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot of difference, between, the 3 or 4 or 5 different ways you might choose to split it. To get honest and maybe ugly, songwriters are making probably the least amount of money now out of all the players.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at sources of revenue, sync licensing aside, when you look at, what songwriters used to make for broadcast of their songs, because everything's changed and everything's streaming now, the lion's share is going to the record label. And a tiny piece is going to the songwriters. So
it used to be like a generation ago, it was a little bit more balanced. I know it was never really in the favor of the songwriters, but
when all the earnings were coming from terrestrial radio and satellite radio, non-interactive streaming, is what they call it.
Right.
Those royalties were much higher.
Okay.
Than what Spotify or Apple Music is obligated to pay for the use of the song. So, and the whole streaming model was negotiated by the record labels, not the publishers. So it works largely in favor of the master owners. So in the category of do not give away your rights, understand the value of keeping your share of the master. If you work with somebody to create your master recording, there's a chance that you're going to be splitting the ownership of that master recording. But generally speaking, if you go into a studio and pay a producer to produce your song, then the act of paying them their due, you want to get this in writing, of course. You want to have this agreement between you and your producer, but the fact that you paid them for it, it is generally accepted that that's a work for hire and they don't share in the ownership of the master.
Right. And you could technically work it so that if you agree with the producer, a producer may take part of it as cash and part of it as a small percentage of what, like there's a middle ground in there somewhere if you want to do.
There's a middle ground in there, and that absolutely should be negotiated up front. Mm-hmm. When you engage somebody.
When you say master recording, so are we talking like the final mix down?
We're talking about an audio recording that is ready to be released.
The one that ends up on Spotify, on Apple, on that copy.
So there are, when you hear a song broadcast anywhere, it represents 2 different properties. One of them is the song itself, the intellectual property that the songwriters came up with. And the other is the master recording, and that's what the artist is presenting. And, some songs are recorded by 10, 15, 20 different artists. They're still the same song property, but they're all separate master recording properties. So here's it happens far too often that a songwriter works with a producer to produce, or a songwriting artist works with a producer to create something for release, and the producer says, I want to share the songwriting. And sometimes they manage to get it. But unless the producer is actually working on the songwriting, they had no business creating the song. And if I went to another producer next week and made a completely different recording, why should the first producer, who now has a cut of the songwriting, earn on the other production? If the producer wants a cut of anything, it should be a cut of the master recording. So in the category of do not give away your rights, if someone is asking for percentage points, make sure it makes sense. If they're contributing to the songwriting, then they should share in the songwriting ownership. If they're contributing to the production, then they can have a share of the master recording.
Even if it's one line of lyric?
Even if it's one line of lyric. Here's the thing. It's so hard to measure how much better the song became when that line of lyric was changed.
Yeah. It's very hard to quantify that.
Very hard to quantify. And it just may not be worthwhile trying to quantify it. Nowadays it's so common to see a song hit the charts with 12 writers on it. And some people misinterpret what's going on there. They say, oh, well, the beat maker is important. The beat maker always deserves a share of the songwriting. The sound designer, the guy that came up with those cool, unique synth sounds deserves a share of the songwriting, because that's what I see happening on this 12-person writing credit sheet.
I watched a new video by YouTuber David Bennett yesterday. He was talking about interpolation, where it's not the difference between interpolation and sampling. Sampling is you actually take the literal recording and put it in your song, and then you pay a royalty to the original recording artist. Interpolation means you just grab the melody and you re-record it, or the chord progression and you re-record it, or the melodic riff or whatever. And then most often, to avoid any legal shenanigans, they just list the original songwriters, if it was 40 years ago or whatever. And so that list of songwriters then gets longer. It's just list everyone who wrote it back in the day.
Well, but here's the thing is, not all songs are created equally, and not all songs not all song productions are created equally. It's one thing for the three of us to write a song together and then hire a production team to come up with the beats and the sound design and the arrangements and all that. But if the three of us had come up with the melody and lyrics and the song before approaching any of those people, they did nothing to inspire the songwriting. Whereas in a big music town like Los Angeles, these tracks are being written before there's a melody and lyric. A top liner is being brought into the studio. A top liner and a lyricist, they're working together on what sounds like a finished track. And they're coming up with a cool melody and cool lyrics to go with that track. They are absolutely motivated and inspired by what they're hearing, the contributions of the beat maker and the sound designer and the arranger. So in that situation, I would say that those contributors participated in the songwriting. They inspired the songwriting. They were, I'm doing air quotes, for the sake of our podcast listeners, they were in the room. They had an impact on the songwriting. That's not the case if the three of us wrote a song together and then hired a production team to make the production. They didn't have an impact on the songwriting. So whether they share in some percentage points on the master recording, maybe that's realistic, maybe that's reasonable. But I wouldn't suggest that they should be listed as songwriters.
We got into a discussion with Blair Packham about this a while back, several years ago. I think it was when we were doing the show live on the radio. And I was talking about collaborations I've been involved in where I come up with a little chord progression on the piano, a little melodic thing, and then someone else sings, top lines it, lyric and melody. So I had nothing to do with the lyric and melody technically, but his contention was that the lyric and the melody is the song, because you can reharmonize that into a different instrumental part and it's still the same song. I mean, jazz musicians do this all the time. They'll take a popular song and change the underlying stuff on it. So it's a question of where do you draw that line of what's songwriting and what's a 1-6-4-5 is big deal, right?
Yeah. And other songwriters may not agree with the way I'm laying this out, but I don't want to be unfair to any of my collaborators, and I want to show the value of my collaborators.
Yeah.
So if in any way I think they may have done something that caused me to write a song I wouldn't have written without them, then they're in the room. They contributed. They're part of it.
What about performance royalties? This is something that I knew about songwriting royalties Fine, okay. But then something I learned about more recently, especially when you're in a band and you're playing live, because there's a whole other. I mean, we haven't even talked about the songwriting organization yet, but but as far as another recognition of the value is if you perform a song, which, as I understand it, a play on the radio or a play on Spotify is a performance in the same way as you playing it live in a bar counts as a performance, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they are public performances of the song. Right. Whether they're by the person who wrote the song or somebody covering your song, they are public performances of the song. And they should ideally find their way to a list of, well, these are the songs that were performed today and are due royalties. And then they would be reported from whatever jurisdiction. If that happened in England, then money would be collected in England and shared with the Canadian organization that's going to get it to you for your song.
Right.
So now, it's not the case that every time you perform your song live, it's worth a royalty. There are some requirements. It needs to be for a paying audience, and right, it needs to be at a venue where the promoter of the show, which could be you, or it could be someone who books the shows, or if it's a great big venue, it could be a promotions team, that they actually put money up to license the music that's being performed at the show, and that money goes to paying the songwriters whose songs were performed at the show. Oh. So if you put on a show, you put a band together and you go and tour the country playing your songs, you may actually have to submit whatever it would be for the size of your venue. You may have to pay $50 or $100 to SOCAN to license the music that's being performed at the show, so that you can then turn around and claim your payment back for the royalties that you're due. And
so a large
and it has to be a paying crowd. They have to pay at least, I think, $6 or $7 a ticket, and it has to be promoted. There has to be at least
a large venue like Lee's Palace in Toronto or the Opera House in Toronto, they would have already paid SOCAN.
They would have negotiated, right? A massive annual license,
right,
with SOCAN. So this is songwriters and publishers. So we're talking about the song property. So you put it on your hat as a songwriter and saying, where should I be registering myself as a songwriter? And most likely for all of us listening, as a self-publisher. And in Canada, it's SOCAN. You're going to go to Society of Composers, Authors, and I forget what the N stands for, but it's SOCAN. And they're in the business of licensing public performance of songs. So again, the money comes from the venues. The venue pays for the right for these songs to be performed to a paying audience. And then SOCAN turns that into royalties going to the songwriters. So, anybody. Yes. Yeah. So yes, in the case of a live performance, it's the venue. That's where the money comes from to pay for the live performances. And you, as an artist, if you're selling tickets to the audience and it's above the threshold, which I'd have to check on the SOCAN website, but I think it's something as low as $6 or $7 or $10. Then you want to be reporting, this is the entire set list from the night. I did a bunch of covers. So guess what? Elton John's going to get paid, because I always do an Elton John song. And in the case of a streaming service, yes, they are obliged for every song play to pay a royalty to SOCAN. Now it's a way different scale. It's way less money, because the royalties were, the bodies that came up with royalties, 100 years ago, or maybe not quite 100 years ago, but they were dealing with a different model. They were dealing with non-interactive. They were dealing with, well, okay, when this song plays on radio, it's going to 100,000 ears, which, for those of you doing the math, is probably 50,000 people. It was 2 years each because we had stereo, at least in the 70s.
Yes. Yeah, for mono, it was a whole different thing.
So if you one play on a major radio station in a city like Toronto could get you $25 for one spin of your song, then when they came up with royalty rates for streaming, well, you're only streaming to one person. So it's a tiny fraction of what they would have previously said. This, we're streaming to 100,000 people. So so all of those streaming radio, it's not regulated yet for internet radio, but satellite radio has to pay for it. Terrestrial radio has to pay for it, and SOCAN collects for all of these. They do the data sampling and they figure out who's been played and how many times they've been played and to what size audience. And they take their administration fee and they send the rest to the songwriters that are members of SOCAN, or if it's a US writer or a British writer, they send it to that organization to send to the songwriter. That's for performance royalties. It's not covering the other royalty due to songwriters and publishers, which is the mechanical royalty, the reproduction rights. So anytime your song is fixated in another copy. In the old days, this was really easy to visualize. It was every time I stamped another record, that was another mechanical instantiation of your song. So the songwriter gets paid for every one of those. And it used to be something like 5 cents per song per record stamped. So, if you got even a deep cut on a Celine Dion record, cha-ching, because you'd get 5 cents for every one of those albums stamped. It's still a mechanical royalty when it comes to streaming. But it's nothing like the same size of royalty. And there are similarly these things called reproduction rights, which, heck, if Spotify is going to stream your song, they've got to make a local copy of it. They have to pay to make that instance. So every place, if a radio station is going to add your song to rotation, they have to make a copy of it on their hard drive. They pay for that. All of that is handled by a different organization. It's CMRRA. It's CMRRA, the Canadian Mechanical Reproductive Rights Association. And SOCAN has started to get into this as well. So here's the first case where you might be asking yourself, well, who do I choose? Do I assign this right of mine to CMRRA so that they can issue licenses and collect my royalties, or do I assign it to SOCAN? In any case where you have a choice to make, and there are a few, I recommend you reach out to somebody at each organization and say, tell me why you're the best at doing this. When SOCAN started doing reproduction rights, I reached out to SOCAN to say, hey, I've traditionally been with CMRRA, but tell me what's great about what you're doing. And since they didn't even get back to me, they made my choice pretty easy. Hopefully they're getting back to writers.
Yeah. On the face of it, you think a one-stop shop would be great. Just submit your stuff once and everything's taken care of.
Yes. I'm not even certain that at SOCAN it's a one-stop shop, because it is kind of carved into two different places where you can sign up. So you may in fact have to register your song once on the performance royalty side and again on the mechanical royalty side. I don't know. But here's the thing: when you've finished writing your song and you've agreed on the splits, I know, Neil, you said agree on the splits up front, but oftentimes it's only after you've written the song that you say, wait a minute, you made more of a contribution than we expected. Neil, you surprised me. You were really in the groove that day. So maybe at the end of it, but you have to agree. You have to have that conversation and agree. And if you think that there's a reason that somebody should have a higher or lower share, make sure that there's a good reason. Make sure that it's not, you're not asking for too much or giving away too much, and that you're honoring the relationship, because you want to work together again. So equal splits, they're easiest. When you go to SOCAN's site, and by the way, I don't think any of the organizations we're going to mention, none of them cost to be a member.
Yeah, that's important.
They get paid as a percentage of the royalties that come in. So it's free to join SOCAN. And then when the time is right and you finish writing your song, you log it in your catalog. You add it to your catalog in SOCAN. You list all the contributors, and you mark them either as composers or authors or both. If somebody has a publishing deal, well, then their share of the publishing goes to their publisher. They're not acting as self-published, but most cases, again, for our listening audience, it's probably going to be that you're self-publishing. And SOCAN makes that really simple. If there's not a publisher, don't even list a publisher, and everything is just assumed that you're self-publishing. But make sure the information is accurate the first time out. And there are some ID numbers for your collaborators that you want to get right, so that they're properly being identified as collaborators on the song.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. If you're any kind of collaboration, band or not band, whatever, only one of the collaborators needs to enter all the information for everybody else as well as themselves. Right. Correct? If everyone goes and enters it, then that's not good.
That's right. It should live in the system once. Now, CIMRA, on the other hand, when I engage with CIMRA, it's in my role as a publisher. They actually don't deal directly with writers. They deal with publishers. But I'm a publisher of my songs, so I am a member of CIMRA, and I log my catalog with CIMRA. The way CIMRA likes to do it is they only want me to give the information from my piece of the pie. They don't require everything to add up to 100%.
Oh.
Which is really quite handy, because sometimes I just don't have the other publishers' information. But it's the same kind of deal. You want to make sure that you carefully register your songs and you understand what they're asking for, because they're all a little bit different. But let's leave that as it is. That's songwriting and publishing. It's SOCAN or it's CIMRA in Canada. You may have heard, if you're reading an old book that was written in the U.S., you may have heard Harry Fox Agency. That's the American equivalent of CIMRA. They issue mechanical licenses. So really, in essence, if I wanted to make an album of covers, I would have to negotiate the mechanical licenses, so that for every copy of a CD that I'm creating, I'm paying to make that instance. It's really handy for me to go to one place. I go to CIMRA, I go to Harry Fox, wherever, for my jurisdiction, and I fill out the form and I say, these are all the songs. They're all represented in your catalog. I'm going to pay you a nickel for every CD that I stamp. You don't have to do that for streaming. They take care of it for you.
If I register my songs with SOCAN and CIMRA, do they also handle the rights for the U.S. as well?
They collect from the U.S. agency.
So I don't have to sign up with a U.S. company?
Yeah, you don't want to sign up with an agency in a different territory. SOCAN asks you to choose who you would like to be represented within the States. Right. Because in the U.S., writers can choose to be represented with ASCAP or BMI.
And if you're collaborating with someone remotely, or you went down to Nashville and co-wrote a song with somebody, American, then I guess you could do either, but you should only do one or the other, yeah?
Well, in that case, I would double check with the rights organization. It's possible that you want to make sure that it's registered on both systems. But certainly you don't want to have each of us registering the same song on SOCAN's site.
Yeah.
But I would wager that if you worked with an American, you'd want to have it registered on their PRO's site, Performing Rights Organization, as well as our Canadian PRO. So then let's put on a different hat. So you're an artist, you've written the song, and then you go to the studio and you make a really kick-ass version of it, and you're ready to release it. You are now a record label. You own a product. You own a master recording that can be exploited for a different set of royalties. And so it's a different organization you're going to partner with to represent you as a master record owner. In Canada, Resound is an umbrella organization that it's a little confusing. You could sign up directly with Resound to represent you, or you could sign up with their member agency, Connect Music Licensing. And I don't fully understand why they have the ability for you to sign up with two organizations in the same family for the same right, but you have to choose. And if you're in Quebec, you sign up with Soprock. I love the sound of that. It's a Q at the end, but still sounds like rock. Yeah. And they collect an additional set of royalties that are due to the master owner. Now, here's the thing. Again, when you're a record label and you own this master recording, even if you're an artist that's covering someone else's song, you own that master recording. You don't own the song, but you own the master recording. So you can release it and get it on Spotify and get it on Apple Music and get it everywhere and maybe sell CDs. I say maybe. It's really, really valuable to retain as much as possible the share that you own of your master recording. Don't give it up. Because when a streaming service like Spotify pays to use your music, that 1/1000th of a penny, that adds up when suddenly you've got 50,000 monthly listeners and your song has gone to 1 million listens, you're going to get money. And that money is paid out to whoever owns the master, not to the songwriter. And not to the artist if that artist isn't the record label. It gets paid to the record label. So, if you have a record deal with a label, they're getting paid, and then they're going to give you a portion of that according to whatever contract you signed with them. But this is the most lucrative way for an indie artist to make their money on streaming is by owning the masters. So again, if someone says they want a share of your master, think long and hard about what you're sharing.
And again, if you go into a studio and hire a producer for hire, pay them cash to produce your record, you are the master record owner.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it past some producers at the end of the day to say, well, wait a minute. No, we're sharing in this. And I have clients who we've tried to resolve disputes with their producers because their producer wouldn't release the master recording until they agreed to give up half the share of the recording. You don't want to be in that situation. So ask up front when you get a quote from your producer. Say, how much is it going to cost me to produce this? And if they say it's going to cost you $2,500 per song, or it'll cost you $1,500 and half of the master recording, maybe you want to go with $1,500 and half of the master recording, if that's better for your budget.
Yeah.
And heck, if they're offering that, then they might have some real faith in your song making money too.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
So as a master owner, you're going to be becoming a member of either Connect Music Licensing or their parent company, Resound, or in Quebec, Soprock, and you're going to be registering yourself as the record label, as the owner of the master. So I'm hoping that if you're in the studio making a kick-ass record, you're also performing on it. You don't have to. But any audible contribution to a sound recording. So in fact, if you get your friends to send you voice notes of them pretending to call your answering machine, and those voice notes end up as part of your mix, they're performers on your song. And they have a right to sign up with a rights organization to collect their share as a performer. There are feature performers. So yeah, the lion's share, 80% of anything that's earned for performers goes to the feature performers. That's either, the artist named or the one that's featuring Little Dog, whatever. Anybody else, whether they're, playing a conga or a guitar or piano or singing backups, they're considered non-feature performers, but they're due a share of 20% of the royalties that come to performers. This is new. This only came about in 1997. It's what they call neighboring rights, because there are rights that are beside those of the songwriter. They're neighbors to the rights of the songwriter. So somebody came up with that neighboring rights term. And then, the Canadian government decided they needed a better name. So they call it equitable remuneration. I don't know, neighboring rights.
It's a bit more of a mouthful than neighboring rights.
It's a mouthful. Neighboring rights is catchy. So there are rights due from any non-interactive broadcasting, radio, terrestrial radio, satellite radio, even the live background music you hear in a bar, restaurant, or at a live event. Those non-interactive listens generate a license, generate a revenue, because the bars have to pay to use music, and the fitness clubs have to pay to use music. It doesn't include people like engineers and mixers. They're not considered performers. There's also, as a performer, you can share in that private copying levy. I'm not sure, this doesn't generate a whole lot of money anymore, because nobody's actually buying blank audio recording media anyways. But yeah, since 1999, any sale of blank CDs or anything like that generated a little bit of money for the
USB stick.
I don't know if it qualifies, because it's not strictly a blank audio.
Well, you could put data on a CD too.
Yeah. Again, I don't think there's a whole lot of this being generated, but it's there. And so you're going to sign up with, you may have heard of ACTRA.
Yes.
ACTRA is an umbrella organization that it's not just about musicians, it's also about actors, all kinds of performers. So ACTRA RACS is the division of ACTRA that that supports performers' royalties. MROC, another rock, but this one is with an ROC. This is the Musicians' Rights Organization of Canada. They've been around a little longer, I think. They've been closely partnering with the union, Musicians Union, for all these years. And there's another one in Quebec called Artisti, which sounds a little Italian, the way I say it. So this is another one of those ones where you choose. You sign up with either MROC or ACTRA RACS or Artisti. So, check them out. If you're in Quebec, you probably want to be looking at Artisti, because they're dealing with Quebec legislations and they're dealing with Quebec with a French-speaking membership. So you choose one of those and say, I'm a performer. And I believe it's the case that as a performer, you can register your own catalog. You're not requiring that someone else registers you on their song registration. So you manage your own catalog as a performer. So those are the places where royalties are coming from, but it's not the only place where you want to be registered per se. You want to get your lyrics up on the net. If your music is streaming somewhere, you want to make sure your lyrics are up there as well. For the streaming services, most of them are covered by this app called Music's Match. That's an X in the middle, Music's Match. So you can go to Music's Match and sign up for a Music's Match for Artists account, and you can supply lyrics, and you can even synchronize it to the playback of your song, so that when we're listening on our phone and Spotify, the lyrics move, the little bouncing ball.
Yeah, my Alexa does that.
Yeah,
just plays the lyrics. Yeah.
So that's thanks to somebody submitting it to Music's Match. Apple, because Apple loves to do things differently, they don't get it from Music's Match. You have to go into your Apple Music for Artists Apple Music, there's no X there, Apple Music for Artists account and put your own lyrics up there for your songs to play back with lyrics on Apple. You could also sign up with an organization out of Toronto called Lyric Find.
Oh, yeah.
They go a little further than just supplying lyrics to the streaming services. They can license your lyrics to show up in different places where it's appropriate. So, if somebody was making, online lyric books, they'd license your lyrics from Lyric Find. So again, another partner that's going to take a right that you have and they're going to manage it for you.
So that is a royalty?
That is a royalty, yeah.
Okay.
There's not a lot of money generated in that field. But some people are pushing the buttons on their own career and making things happen for their lyrics too. If you're releasing your songs, you want to. We used to log into Nielsen BDS data systems and describe our song to Nielsen so that the airplay charts would represent, well, how many times my song has been played on radio. Nielsen BDS wound up a couple of years ago, and now it's a company called Mediabase. It's free to do it. You go to mediabase.com when you're going to release something that could get played on radio, and then they have the information about how many times your song's getting played. If you wonder where charts get their information from, it's either Mediabase or sales and streaming reporting comes from a sister company called Luminate Data. That used to be SoundScan. I'm sure SoundScan is a familiar name. So Luminate Data, same thing. You go to Luminate Data and you use their Google form to say, I've released this song. And if you're a growing artist and you're getting attention, then you have a chance of being on the charts and on sales reporting and streaming reports. So the other thing, I didn't mention it yet, but the Canadian government likes to get a copy of everything you release in Library Archives Canada. It used to be more meaningful to them when they could get a physical copy of your vinyl or your CD, but they still want to have a copy registered of everything that gets released. So they have a database of the arts being generated in Canada.
Wow.
So,
does that generate a royalty? No.
That doesn't generate a royalty, no.
That's just for...
But they like you to register.
Good.
That's for the public good. But they like you to register that as well.
Wow.
So...
They don't do a very good job advertising that, do they?
No, they don't. I didn't even know about it until I got a letter from them. When I put out my first or second CD, I got a letter from them saying, please send us a copy. And I'm like, how did they even know? But
wow.
Now we know.
They must collaborate with SOCAN and these other organizations somehow to get lists of top performing, whatever, or anybody, whatever.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a little hard when you're not offering anything in return, like a royalty.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Why would I do this?
Yeah. So I don't want to take too much time on it because we're talking about registering your song, but I do want to mention, since we're talking about your songs going out into the public, that you have some decisions to make when it comes to how to release your music.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you that haven't done it yet or don't fully understand the system, the way your song gets played on a system like Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon is you go through a distributor. So in the old days, it was the distributor who would travel the country and stock the shelves at every Sam the Record Man. So the distributor would work for the record label. They'd have their own distribution department, or you'd have our separate distribution company. That was their job, was to get it out. So now they have a thing called digital aggregators. They are the distributors of digital music. These are companies like CD Baby and TuneCore and Distrokid and Symphonic, and there are many. I always, if I have a chance to talk about it, I want to make sure that I say, choose your aggregator wisely. It's heartbreaking when a small aggregator goes out of business. Some people have been convinced by the mastering engineer who mastered their record, oh, just let me take care of that for you. I'll get your stuff on Spotify. And they're being the aggregator. But then if they go out of business, you have no access to your music. You can't manage it. You can't earn from it because the aggregator is no longer there. So, choose somebody who's been in business for a while and who looks like they're going to be in business for a while. I personally prefer CD Baby, and it's in part because they've been around forever. They were the first to be doing this. And they're still among the biggest. But the other half of it is their pricing model. They came up with it in a very artist-friendly way. They've always done it this way. You pay once to them up front to prepare the release. And then if your release makes money, they take a tiny commission. If your release doesn't make money, they don't take any more money from you. Somewhere along the way, I think TuneCore might have been the first one to do it, came up with this new model. Wouldn't it be great if you paid once a year?
That's the way Distrokid does it.
Yeah. So to keep the relationship with your aggregator alive, you have to retain them on an annual basis. So you pay them $50 a year or something like that. And they spin it in the marketing to make it look really great. You keep 100% of your revenues.
Yeah.
I don't know what percentage of indie artists are actually making enough revenue to cover $50 a year to the aggregator. And if you stop paying it, again, you have an orphan release out there. So somebody was brilliant when they came up with this idea because they're making money even if the artists aren't making money.
That's a subscription model for any kind of service or I mean, it's not, you can argue that's not even a service. Like you say, CD Baby collects up front for the initial work they have to put into it to do it. It reflects the work that they're doing. Yeah. Subscription model like that, where they're, it's a kind of a different thing. Yeah. I have one EP on digital distribution, and I found a service called RouteNote that has two services. One is a free service where they distribute it everywhere for free, and they take 15% of your of whatever they collect. Yeah. The other one is you pay. I think I couldn't remember if it was a subscription or upfront, and then you keep 100%. Right. I went for the free and because like you're right, like do I even make $50 a year? No.
Well, but if you're an artist that is doing well and has a big audience and is generating revenue, you may decide it's worth it to me. This is the way I'm going to go. Just know the difference and decide what works for you. You can release your first 3 albums with one aggregator and then your next 3 albums with a different aggregator. You could change with every release if you wanted. You're not stuck with them for life.
But if you do go with one of the small ones, for instance, for your mastering engineer, and then they do go out of business, you can then still redistribute it again. You can distribute it again, presumably, with another aggregator, right?
Yes, you'd have to re-release it. So you'd have to
you'd have a new release date.
You'd have to partner up. Well, and it's possible. You'd have to ask the aggregator. It's possible that they could recreate the release and maintain the history of it. It's possible. I don't think all aggregators are equal on that front. But that's just something to keep in mind. So the other thing that I wrote down here when I was doing my, what we should talk about is a bunch of IDs that you should have handy. So when you register with different bodies, they're going to ask you for certain ways of identifying yourself and identifying your song. And the most common one that we hear is ISRC, an ISRC code, an International Standard Recording Code. It is a unique identifier that identifies the release of a song or video. And it's not identifying the song, it's identifying the recording. So, you as your record, wearing your record label hat, you assign an ISRC code, and there's a standard format for what that code looks like. And you manage your codes, and you come up with, well, here are the codes for each of these releases. If I do a radio version, a remix, an album version, an extended cut, each of those is going to have a different ISRC code so that it can be identified anywhere that it gets used. And it's known to be, oh, it's that song, it's Neil's song. If you know the ISRC and you have to change aggregators, that would be the thing that allows you to say, well, this song that I released 5 years ago, I'd like you to be the aggregator for it. Can you hook up to this song and maintain its history? And the only way they could do that is if they have the ISRC code.
Because the ISRC, like you say, is unique to that particular recording.
It's unique to that particular, forever. Yes, it's a 13 or 15 character.
It's a long code, yeah.
It's a long code. It begins with a few letters that identify you. So once just at the start of your career, you go to Connect Music Licensing and you say, I need a registrant code. I need my ISRC prefix. And they'll ask you to, give all the information about who you are and where you live and, I don't know, what country you're a citizen of. And they'll give you a registrant code, which is a few letters that you'll use for your whole career. Every ISRC that you make will start with that registrant code. And then I believe what comes afterwards is 2 digits for the year. There's probably the country is probably identified, and then the year, and then it's free form for the rest of it. You could come up with anything for the last sort of 5 characters. And so you keep track of the ISRCs. You don't register them with a collection agency, but in some cases you're asked to give it so that it can be properly associated with the song. When you release a song, they say, do you have an ISRC, or should we provide one for you? There's no harm in having CD Baby or TuneCore or whomever assign one for you. It's still the ID for your song, but don't pay anybody for an ISRC. There are websites out there that say, we'll embed an ISRC code for $5 or for $10. And like, it's free, man.
Yeah. And further to your other point, even if CD Baby or whoever assigns them for you for free, you should take a copy of them, save them into a Word document or something like that, just on the off chance that CD Baby blows up and you never know and you might need them.
Yeah. So that's the ISRC. There's sometimes you may be asked for your song's ISWC, your International Standard Work Code. This is assigned by your PRO. So when you register with SOCAN, they're going to give your song an ISWC. Some other places that maybe if you're putting your song in a cue sheet for, that episode of Grey's Anatomy, I don't know, they'll ask for the codes like the ISWC. One really important one when you're registering with SOCAN, because you need to know this for your co-writers, is the IPI, Interested Party Information Number. I know this is really exciting stuff. Songwriters, composers, publishers each have an IPI. You have an IPI that is just you, Neil, and Phil, you have an IPI that is just you. And if I register our 3-way co-write on SOCAN and I put down the wrong IPI, then when that money comes in, some of it's just going to be sitting in a slush fund waiting to be paid out to Neil because I used the wrong IPI. And again, once these things are registered, it can be hard to modify them.
And that's why all collaborators need to have their own sign up on SOCAN.
On SOCAN, yeah.
Even if you're not the one entering the song, you need to have that IPI so that
that's right.
The money goes to you. Yeah,
that's right. And as you can imagine, if I called SOCAN and I said, we made a mistake registering this song, we need to change the information. They need consent from all the collaborators. They're not just going to change it. They have to ask everybody involved and wait, to get a hold of everybody before they can actually fix it. So that's the IPI. Performers in the crowd, you'll have an IPN. international performer number. So when you sign up to MRock, they will say, "Oh, do you have a performer number yet?" "Oh, we'll give you one. Here's your IPN." So keep a really good spreadsheet somewhere on your computer with backups that have all of these codes on them. Mm-hmm. There's a more obscure one, the International Standard Name Identifier, ISNI. You don't generally need this until you're working on synchronizing your music to audio-visual, and then you're identified by that. Yeah. Neil, you're being called.
Yeah, always call me.
And the last one is UPC. Oh. You need a UPC code for your album or single release, because you have a product and your product needs a barcode. That's what a UPC is. So, in North America, it's a UPC. In Europe, it's a European article number, an EAN. Your aggregator will assign a UPC, and hopefully they don't charge you for it. So that's the end of my list. I know that was a whole lot of stuff, and some of it got a little.
Yeah, we'll have to get you to send us your list, and we can put it all on the web post for this episode, and links to all those organizations and all the little check boxes you need to check.
All the little check boxes, yeah.
That's amazing.
So, give yourself at least an afternoon to do all this registering when you're going to put your song out.
Yeah. Wow, that's a wealth of information, Allister.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's just fantastic, because nobody really knows this stuff. And you wouldn't even think about it. So,
and there are more chances to earn money than there used to be.
Huh.
Fantastic.
Especially when you happen to be not just the songwriter, but the performer and the publisher and the record label, and
you can still register this stuff for something you released years ago. Yeah. If you didn't do the MRock, if you only did SOCAN, you didn't do all the other ones, you can still do them, even if your release was a dozen years ago or something. Yeah.
That's right. And in fact, with most of these societies, you can search their catalog of unidentified recordings, right?
Oh, cool.
If you find that your song wasn't properly registered,
right,
but it got some airplay in Germany.
Yeah, because it would have been reported, but then they weren't able to line it up with you because you're not registered on that thing.
So for so many years back, and it's not the same with every society, but they're hanging on to the money, and they're giving you a chance to say, "Well, that was me."
That was me. Put that in my bucket.
Yeah. So it's never too late, but the right time is once you finish with something, once you finish the songwriting, get it logged with SOCAN, even if it's going to be 5 years before you go in the studio and record that song.
But they asked you for the length. So if you haven't recorded it yet, how long? How do you know how long it is?
And in that case, the best you can do is whatever the demo you've got.
Just guess.
You would have recorded a demo of the song.
Yeah, I suppose.
Just a guitar and vocal demo.
Right.
So you'd know that it's 3.5, 4 minutes long. Certainly when there are new performances of your song, there is a way to go to SOCAN and say, well, now, this artist has done my song and their version is 4.5 minutes long.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you do eventually record it 5 years later and the length is 15 seconds difference, you go in and update your
You can go in and update it. It's
okay.
That's probably only used as a tiebreaker if they can't figure out which song they're listening to.
I just
are you looking at the websites and burning your eyes out here, Phil?
I just looked at my SOCAN.
Oh no.
Catalog. Every now and then I get like $24, which is kind of fun.
Thanks.
But some of the songs I have listed, which were listed a long time ago, apparently they were written in 1940.
Oh.
Which is surprising because I wasn't alive then. So
are they sure that you wrote that?
Well, I think so.
Are you sure that you wrote that?
I don't know why they have that tape wrong.
You mean you lifted a melody from someone from 1940 and didn't know it?
Yeah.
That is so weird. I don't even know, because I wouldn't have put it in.
Well, click on the chat button there and ask the bot if they can help you at all.
Well, because I can't remember. I mean, this was back in, the 90s, so I don't remember.
I was going to say it might have been 90, not 40, but
yeah, but I don't.
Maybe back in the Stone Age days of the 90s, we had to submit on paper, and your handwriting was bad, so they thought you wrote 1940 and not 1990.
Wow, that's bizarre. Wild.
So, is there any part of this, do you think, that I didn't mention?
It seems pretty comprehensive. I mean,
some of that wasn't new to me, but a lot of it was new to me. I knew about mechanical, I knew about performance and songwriting, I guess, but that's about it. You didn't stop at 3. You went to like 5.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you back on the show to talk about sync licensing, because that's a whole other bucket, isn't it?
That's a whole other animal. Yeah. And in fact, I'm looking at my page here, and I didn't even mention DMDS. If you've got a really hot song and you think it'll do well in radio, then how do you get it to play on radio? You hire DMDS. I forget what the acronym stands for. But they're the people that will help you put together a really great looking kind of press kit for your release and send it to all the programmers across the country.
As a publicist.
It's not a publicist per se, because what they do is they just make the release available to radio. But then you might hire a publicist to work the phones. Or in this case, it'd be a radio tracker to work the phones and call the radio programmers and say, "Did you see this new release from Neil? Did you see it?"
You should check it out.
The MDS, whoever created it was brilliant. Another brilliant business decision, because they made it easy for radio programmers to use the system. The radio programmers get it for free. It's us, record labels. When we want to push our song out to radio, we pay the $2 or whatever to send it to that radio programmer in BC.
Oh, okay.
But the way they got everybody in the market to use DMDS was by giving it to the radio programmers for free.
Wow.
Oh, right.
So is this like an older company, like pre-internet?
Oh no, it's within the last 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So terrestrial radio is still a thing, eh?
Terrestrial radio, satellite radio, yeah.
Satellite radio, yeah.
Yeah.
All right then.
So this is how they get their music. This is how they get it from Sony. It's how they get it from Universal. It's all done.
Right.
They'll get an email that just says there's a new release. Go check the MDS, and the system is really, really quite smart. You get flashy visuals, and you get to hear the song, and then if you like it, download it right to your computer. And
nice.
Technology.
That was great.
It was. Okie dokie. I think, are we done, Phil?
We, sir, are done.
You're in the band. Okay, that was that was a wealth of information. We'll certainly get all the stuff from you, Allister, so we can post it on our website and have at least that'll be a one-stop shop for everyone to check.
That'll be a one-stop shop.
Yeah. This is what's known as evergreen content in the content world.
Exactly.
Except for when the legislation changes.
Well, that's true.
Okay, I think that is all the time we have on Song Talk Radio. Special thanks to Allister Bradley. That was amazing. And where can our listeners find out more about you?
I'm at allisterbradley.com.
Awesome, and we will put a link to that from our show post.
Yeah, and I'm also at songstudio.ca, of course.
Song Studio.
Now, Allister, you also do this for people. You have a consulting business that you help
I run a services company, tiltedwhiteshed.com, in fact, is my music services business. And basically, I offer help with all the things I know how to do to complement all the things you know how to do. So if you're a whiz at recording, then I can mix your record for you. But if you need help recording it, I can record your record for you. And if you need help getting your song out to Spotify, I can help you with that too. So, wherever you feel like you have a gap, I'm hoping I can fill that gap for you.
Right on.
Awesome.
All righty.
Great.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And we want to hear from you. So please send us your comments on Facebook or Instagram to @SongTalkRadio, or send us an email, feedback@songtalk.ca. Let us know what you learned from tonight's episode, if it's more than one thing, which I'm betting it is. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube channel for live performance videos and full episodes, and subscribe today to the Song Talk Radio podcast on your favorite podcast provider. You can find links to all the products, books, and web services we mentioned on the show on our resources page on the website. We'll have a bunch of these up there, I'm sure. And please join us at our next monthly Song Talk meetup. Whether you're in Toronto for our in-person meetups or anywhere in the world for our online meetups, it's free to join on meetup.com and free to attend. Bring a song and a lyric sheet and get constructive feedback from other songwriters. Stop by songtalk.ca for the link. You can follow me at neilmodi.com. You can follow Phil.
PhilEmery.ca.
And Allister, you're on social media. What's your favorite social media channel?
I'm on Facebook most often.
Facebook, yeah. All right, kicking it old school. And be sure to stop by the website, songtalk.ca, to browse past shows and find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for tuning in, and keep on writing.
Keep on writing.
And keep on registering.
Registering. Good night, everyone. What an awesome show, man.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
M-Rock. Stop rock.
Wealth of information.
Stop rock. M-Rock. Stop.
So much stuff I wish I knew way back when.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing stuff. This is going to be a very popular episode, I think.
Do you think? Yeah, I think so.
Well, yeah. I was going to joke near the end, free digital toques to anybody who stuck around till the end.
Get your toque as an NFT.
It's going to get into this NFT, or I guess it's already gone though. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe people have clued in that it's like not real.
Just another scam.
Okay, that's the truth.
I checked out the Leroy Silk movie today, Allister, for the show.
Oh yeah,
neat little story.
It's
a nice little story. The songs were great, of course.
Well, yeah, I think I can be objective and still say that I think the strength of the movie is the music.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's pretty great.
But how much of a story can you tell in 20 minutes? I don't know.
Yeah,
probably could. But
I mean, our lead actor, he really brought it. That's him singing on the radio.
Yeah, and I could have been convinced that was his story.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very well done.
When we screened it first for an audience, and did Q&A afterwards, there were several people that were like, "But I'm still confused. So this is a real guy, right?
Yeah.
This is a real artist, right? Where can I find that music?" No, it's not.
Was the actor? Is he an actor and then a singer, or is he a singer who acts, or what?
He's a singer who acts. Okay. Yeah, I mean he does have a band. He's up in Northern Ontario. He's not like he gets out and tours much.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we had to have. I mean, it's not like we could have worked with any old singer and teach them how to act.
Yeah, that's true.
We needed somebody who had at least some acting, but we couldn't teach somebody how to be a singer.
No.
So
had to teach them the songs.
Yeah, and all of that was done during the pandemic over Zoom.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That thing was
really cool.
He was up in outside of Timmins, and I was here, sitting right here at my computer, and the actress that played, I'm forgetting the character's name. In fact, the
Casalina, something like that.
Contessa.
Yeah, something like
that. She was in Istanbul.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wild.
So we set them up with their iPhones filming them.
Yeah.
And microphones recording their audio off camera, of course. And they would interact with each other, looking at each other on the Zoom screen.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They'd see each other in Zoom, but the camera, it wasn't the Zoom recording that we were using to make the film.
Mm.
We figured we could reduce the quality later to Zoom quality, but we couldn't improve it.
No,
that's true.
And then when it came time to recording the tunes, the same kind of thing. I used remote recording software to record the actor in his home.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Singing on tracks that me and Sean did here.
Right.
That is so amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, it worked out really well.
A lot of fun. Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, the strength of the film is the songs, for sure.
And the writing was just such a good time.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it's one thing that I was working with a really talented young writer, and that I enjoyed hanging out with him because he's my kid.
Yeah.
but we also had those boundaries, right? Like we knew who Leroy Silk was,
right?
But we had to write something that worked for Leroy Silk.
Yeah.
We had to stay inside the lines, and we had the fun of making choices about, well, okay, so something early in his career, what hadn't he learned to do yet? So let's sort of dumb it down.
Right.
and then show that he's matured later in his career.
Huh.
And in fact, the song that was sort of the finale song, his new music.
Yeah, the Catalyst song.
I had to represent what it would have been in 2011 when he was singing it during soundcheck. So I had to unwrite it a little bit.
Right.
It didn't have a pre-chorus. It didn't have didn't have all the same words.
Right.
So, as a songwriter, you'll get how that was fun.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
so cool.
To be playing those kind of games.
And that's really cool. Like you think, okay, I'm gonna write this song for this person to cover, which is to sing or whatever, but to think about the character, the actual character, and what their personal journey might be and how that would affect the songwriting. That's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. We intentionally made a distinction between, in his early material, he was never revealing anything about himself. He was always singing about other people.
Mm.
And then only in his later material, when he was more mature and more confident, was he actually singing about how he feels.
Mm.
Oh, very cool.
Nifty.
So, on so many levels, man, songwriting can be fun.
So cool.
Awesomeness.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah,
really
thanks for
enjoyed
doing
it.
this, Allister. Really appreciate all the work and all the effort and all the research.
And I did a local recording I can send you.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, shoot it over to Phil. He does the editing.
That would be good.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesomeness.
So.
Well, everyone have a great evening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll let you know when the show drops.
Okay. Great to hang with you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Have a good night. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.